A successful business doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of hard work, dedication, and persistence, which is exactly what the Coffee and Hustle podcast is all about. Joining me on this podcast discussion is Lori Fischer, the owner of Just Imagine Coaching and Consulting. And today we're going to talk about significant leaders and the 4 C's. And we're going to review who do we want to surround ourselves with, and where do you want to find those opportunities, and what's seeking out to improve your abilities and knowledge. And finally, we're going to talk about what does it take to be a great leader. Hello, and welcome to our Coffee and Hustle podcast. This is Carla from Design by Carla, and we have the one and only Lori Fischer from Just Imagine and Coaching and Consulting today. And we are going to talk about significant leaders and 4 C's. And welcome to our podcast, Lori.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
Yes, thank you. And today's topic, we're going to go over some really important information about things that you've broken down on the 4 C's. And I think this is a really important topic today that we're going to discuss. But however, I do want y'all to I want you to meet her because she's an incredible business coach and a leader here in Huntsville, Alabama. And she coaches individuals one-on-one and in groups, right? Mm-hmm. And then you bring this great energy and focus and dedication with interactions with others. You're an absolute pleasure to be around. You're a great coach. You're an inspiration to a lot of business owners out here. And you have your background. You have well over 15 years in this?
It's actually longer than that, and I don't want to add up all of the years, but I will say close to 20 at this point.
And you've also been involved in like some workshops. You just recently did one for the WDC Foundation, and you helped them do what? What was that workshop?
So with the WDC Foundation, it was to help support them with their resumes and interviewing skills. So that was a real treat to be able to get out in the community and help some of the young ladies just get more prepared as they're getting ready to go into the job world.
Yeah, workforce. and we always, I think it's always good to be prepared, right?
It is.
And we need to practice our skills, because if we go out there and, not prepared, then, I think we think that we're going to get something, and then we get kind of let down when we don't, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting is literally this week I have a gal who's, I will call next chapter of life. She's retiring from 30, 40 years of doing hairstyling and wants to just transition herself into just regular work for the man. And she has never done a resume or interview prep, so we're going to work on that this week.
So she's going back into the workforce. Mm-hmm. Is she ready for that?
That's what we're going to do this week.
And I think that when you've been your own, a hairstylist, you're actually your own boss. Even though you pay to be in a shop, right? Going from that into this leadership style, you had to have a certain mind frame for that, right? Yeah.
And so it's the key. So when we start talking about leadership, it's the reverse side of that. Is to be a really good leader, you also need to know how to be a good follower. And what it takes is to be able to transition your mindset from one side of the equation to the other.
Well, I have to be honest with you, I'm not really much of a follower.
We
You
have to work on that.
Well, I follow to a degree, but I've also got a different kind of leadership style, and I think that's something I'm finessing and changing, and always, even though you've been in the industry for so long, right? I've been doing this now for 21 years, this business aspect. Yeah. You're always having to change your leadership style, right?
Yes. And so part of what we're going to dive into is, in talking about the 4 C's, is really to look through that lens of what are some key attributes or skills, competencies, if you will. And so that's really one of the first C's, is talking about competency. So when you look at a leader and pose the question of what does it take to be a great leader or become a great leader, there's going to be foundational skills. But then there's things that, if you look at it and kind of take the notion of back to basics, what are some of those things? And so I just wanted to come in today and highlight a little bit of that, because, in this world that has shifted, that we didn't necessarily have control in the shift, there are aspects of leadership that are still important. that we need to kind of re-ground or maybe even reframe our thinking around. And so one of those is how we look at teaming and building and maintaining a good, solid, cohesive team. Who are our players? How do we recruit for the players that are going to be on our team? But it really starts with us first. Like, what is it that we're doing? And so I actually have a quote from a gentleman named Patrick Lencioni. Ever heard of him?
No, actually, I do not.
So he's written many, many books. One of my personal favorites is around the health of organizations. But he's also done things around leadership and culture. And culture work used to be the thing that I focused on. But the quote is this: leaders who can identify, hire, and cultivate employees who are, and these are, to me, some key pieces, back to ingredients, humble, hungry, and smart, will have serious advantage over those who don't. And right now, with the fact that the world shifted through the pandemic and there's more remote work, leaders in some cases are struggling, because how do you cultivate an employee when you're not always there seeing them day to day?
I think that is something that leaders have to readjust now. And actually, I think in some ways we have to be kind of more relaxed in it. But then yet also be, focus oriented too on the task that needs to be done. And so you're giving them that flexibility to be, hybrid, in-house or in remote as well. But for me, I honestly think that it has to work both ways. You have to have some flexibility, in which this is the way my company's run for many years. But there's a lot of lessons along the way that we've learned. But I can see that not everybody is made for remote work. For me personally, managing your own time is so important, and we have so many distractions when it comes to that.
Sure. And you happen to be in an industry that you do need to collaborate and connect with your client base. Like, there's a physicality to it. So recording podcasts or going out and shooting videos on site are all going to be key things. There are some ways to be able to do that remotely, but far and few between. So that idea of having connection is not just for you to your client, but you to your employees, whether they're 1099 and contract for hire, or they're actual employees that are going to be a part of whatever industry you're in this case for marketing and looking at, how to help people do better with designs and whatever, which comes to the second point, which is create organizational clarity. As leaders, and especially as the top leader, CEO, president, grand poobah, whatever title you want, as the owner of the organization, is organizational clarity becomes important, because when employees or contract workers stray, a lot of times it's because they're not sure they're going to go on their own idea of what needs to happen. So we do need to set up a foundation. Part of it is getting clear with what's the vision of this organization, what's the mission that we're on, how are we going to do this by the goals that we're going after. It could be client work, it could be the type of businesses that we're going after. So some way to actually talk about creating clarity. And of course, a piece is, and I know you and I have talked about this, but the notion around values. We all walk around with personal values, but the other piece as a leader that becomes so important in a competency way is, how am I kind of helping my employees, helping myself to understand what are the values that we represent in our business versus what my or someone else's personal values are.
Well, I think that's so important. I think that, like you said, I think as a business owner, we have these values, and I think a lot of times, like, my biggest mistake was keeping it in my head and speaking on it, right? Even though I said these things, or this is how I felt, or this is what my emotions and how I was connecting with my business, along with my clients and the people that was working within the company. Writing it down was probably the most important aspect, because then you physically can see it, and then the people that come on board really can match those same values, because not everybody read that and go, well, these values don't even match what I do. This is not what I believe in. Even though they probably sign it, you'll find out sooner or later that they don't follow those same values. Right. And that's something that I've come across too.
Yeah. Well, and when you look at it, if there's a mismatch of values, you will find struggle. Whether that's you have an expectation of someone and they're not meeting it, and it just feels like there's this forced thing going on, or someone just gets frustrated and may leave part of it is they may leave because the values don't match. My personal values, if I'm getting hired into an organization, I should be checking what a company or an organization or a leader says is important. And we do that in different ways. Well, this is saying just be very clear about it.
Yeah, and I think those are very good. But I also think that companies put down their values but don't really stand behind them either. So there's this plus and minuses when you read that kind of stuff. I think also it was like, so when people sign that contract saying these are my values and I believe in the mission and vision and values of that company has to follow through and do those things.
Correct.
And like something that I think that you and I spoke about before was sometimes someone can be so creative and they could be so good for your team and so good at what they do, but they may not match the quality and those values that you expect. Or, and that's when you start looking at those cracks of like, okay, you signed the contract, but yet we're not following the same values, and there's a separation that's happening, and you can't force it.
Right. And so that becomes the part where recognizing as a leader, I need to do something about it to see if I'm sensing someone is getting off track, what is causing that? It can be that, their personal values aren't matching up with the organization. It could be that in their mind it was... they saw it one way and then suddenly or not so suddenly it became something different. And as leaders, we have to kind of what I call force clarity. It is host conversations, offer opportunities to discuss. And that kind of gets into the third point around competency is over communicate. When we think we've said stuff enough or we set up expectations and we think, oh, they've got it, we really need to do a better job of checking in, because I know in some of the coaching that I do with like teams, like executive teams, a lot of times they like say the thing one time, or I sent the email or I sent the memo, and it's like, okay,
you should be able to get it.
Yeah, you should be able to get it. I'm like, what, by osmosis, just because they're in proximity to the message, it's just going to seep into their pores and they get it? No, we have to over communicate. So my phrase is tell them. Tell them again, tell them what you told them, and then summarize what you told them.
Well, and I'm going to say this, though, even though I think we follow that model sometimes your team looks at you going, hey, I got it the first time, you know what I mean? But, and I agree with you, and I do think the recapping aspect is really important, because if you got a project and you've got deadlines, you want to make sure that, okay, A, you want to make sure they understand the project. B, they understand the deadlines. And number 3 is always recapping and refollowing up. Okay, what's coming up and what's going on, and did we have this done, and do we have this checklist done? But also, as a business owner, sometimes we have trouble explaining the idea. Mm-hmm. So we're not perfect. I don't want people to think that business owners are perfect leaders, are perfect people. We make mistakes too. And sometimes it's like, how do I become better at communicating with you? And that's something that we have to go through.
So let me ask you a question on that. What have you found to make you successful in that area, or make you better?
Make me better? I think just kind of being able to express my idea more than once, and showing them, demoing it. So not just verbally, but also a picture or a website or an example of what's in my head. Like visually, that's how I look at things sometimes. And so when I put those two pieces together, whether it's, here's what I'm thinking and here's visually what I'm saying, that there's that moment of that aha moment with your team, because then they're like, yes. But then the one thing that I really would like to see is that they get it, but also they just run with it and just be able to
they can riff on it. See, and that's part of the reason why I want to ask that question, is because I think a key piece for individuals, and you're in a creative environment, makes it even sometimes like herding cats, like, people are all over, is to get them to express what they heard. So the summary doesn't always mean that it has to come from the leader, but the leader needs to lead that conversation. So, maybe there's a whole new venue or a whole new idea or way of being in the business that's going to be happening, and you have it caught in your head in a certain way, but in reality, to meet the needs of the client or the customer or whoever your end user is that the people that you have hired need to be able to articulate. So this is what I believe you're telling me, boss or manager or leader. These are the things that I think we can go with. I got your idea, you set a foundation, and now let me take it and make it even better.
Yeah, and I think that really is a helpful aspect. And, one of the things I'm really bad at too, and is I have a lot of great ideas, right? And one of the things is, so I'm trying to sift through is like really prioritize what those ideas are. And number two, what's important now and what's important later. And so divvying that up instead of like throwing everything at one time really seems to help everybody, because if I can come in here and give you about 5 to 10 ideas in one day, could you imagine what's going on in my head?
Right.
So in some ones I have to like give them pieces at a time, because I have to visualize, is this going to work for our team? And is everybody on board to do it?
And sometimes, are they ready? There's a part of it in a learning capacity is, while the idea may be good, it may not be a right now idea. It could be later. So, and in some cases that mean education and learning that has to happen behind that. And so part of clarity is also, when you want to reinforce clarity, is to come back to the human systems or systems. What do you have available to be able to support all of the ideas? When you're in a creative environment, much like you are and your team is, sometimes there's so many ideas. It's like, okay, but what is the anchoring? And that's when we come back to our values. That's when we come back to the vision of the organization. What are we doing? It's okay to redefine that from time to time. But part of it is, okay, clarity is going to come when I know what the goals are. I know what my role is in doing that, or the process and the procedure that we are saying we're going to do. You could have 1,000 different creative marketing agencies, whatever, out there, and they could all do it slightly different. But what is our way? What's our signature way of being or showing up?
Yeah, and I think that transparency is a big factor in that, and being honest and open about exactly what it is the company needs to do at that given moment, because the ever-changing of our economy and our clients, we have to be able to cater to their needs, but also we have to be one step ahead in the marketing aspect of like what's going on in the industry, so that we can go to the client and say, okay, these things are happening, this is the way we need to be doing things, let's make these changes. And then you got to have a team that's ready to go, yes, let's do this, and then they're able to pivot along with the client, and that's so important. But I do know that it's the process of being this leader aspect of like being able to communicate, because when you start bringing on more and more people on your team, there's always going to be that one person that may feel left out, or they're not getting the most attention. But it's just that building block, and a lot of times it's just everybody has a different type of personality, and you've got to make sure your team also gets along very well too, and
they can come together
and communicate and be creative, and look at each other and go, aha, we all get it at the same time. But the leader, the person that's in charge of that, really has to be on their toes as well, and always being attentive, understanding, because things do happen.
Yeah. And so when you look at these, back to the 4 C's, which I don't know if I went over all 4 of them, but competency, connection, collaboration, competition. So competency is the skills. When what you're talking about is the connection piece. So when we start to drive into how do we stay connected, that's even inside of your organization. You may be a small party of 3 or 4, or you may be a party of 500. There's still this requirement of getting to know people and meeting them where they're at. It's the same thing that we would do when we're outwardly focused on bringing someone in to partner in the business or to be a client in the business, is we're trying to meet them where they're at and take them to whatever next level is set up as an expectation. So as leaders, sometimes we want to figure out what makes people tick. And sometimes it's the non-work things that are the most helpful.
Well, I think also when you're talking about connection, everybody needs to understand what your company does, right? And so it's not just to fill a job position that's required by you and collect that paycheck, or taking advantage of that company by just being there and not being a productive unit. And so I think that's so important to ever make sure everybody has their place and timestamp and know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and understand that certain departments could be building differently than others, right? So you could look at your company and go, okay, we've got this company, this department over here doing this XYZ. Then you got this part of the department doing this part. But maybe this part of the department is rebuilding and readjusting and revamping the message in the development of the company. But that's the part of the leader that has to relate that back over. Sometimes people don't always understand that.
Right.
And they don't understand that there's a part of the department that may not be as important right now, but there's parts of the business that you know that there's a need for it. And so I call it the accessory of the business. And that accessory could definitely become bigger and bigger for potential clients and things
timing,
like that.
like what's happening in the world or what's happening in someone else's business.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Timing is everything. I'm in the marketing to business, and so you can't be an expert in every part of this business, and there's plenty of us out there. But the connection part is when you're networking, right? So when you're going out and you're networking with other people that you're trying to get them as a client or sales pitch them and stuff, everybody on your team is an extension of that message.
Yes, 100%. And the thing with networking is, whether it's formal or informal, we're kind of in that role no matter what.
Right.
So, I fly mostly under the radar of being a solopreneur on my own, doing my own thing, but work with a lot of different businesses. So one of the things that I have put the hat on is as a connector in my community. So dropping here into Huntsville purposefully and intentionally, I've always been networking. Like whether it's sitting out at a restaurant on the weekend, chatting it up with someone over a cocktail, or out formally in like B&I type of networking where it's more formalized and put together and on a regular, continuous basis. I always think about the purpose and the intent of going to those networking. How do you network, by the way?
Well, I think I'm very picky about where I'm going and what I do. I think in some ways I don't want to spread myself so thin. And I am not made for every person in this business industry. I'm looking for a certain type of client. So a lot of times, like when clients meet me, I'm actually interviewing them majority of the time because I want to know if they're a fit for my company. And yes, I have turned clients down or they just were not a fit for the model. I've learned over the years that I don't have to accept every client. And that's okay. Like sometimes it's okay to say no because it's not necessarily a fit for us. But that's the whole point. It's like my business model may not be the same as another marketing business model. And that's perfectly okay.
Nor should it be, because if you are leading it, owning it, and running it, it is unique to you and your vision of what you believe success.
Well, I mean, I get labeled as a boutique marketing company, right?
Sure.
And that's
just by
okay.
size.
Well, but the thing is that we manage quite a bit, even though we're
book of business is probably big.
Right, right. We have those boutique companies, but the thing that we do is that we take clients at the level that they're at and we build them into bigger businesses. And also, we've done multiple businesses with the same clients. Like they've actually split their companies up, and we ended up managing several parts of their businesses. So our job is to take that company and develop something even bigger, and we have to be able to communicate. And so that has to be that part of that network. And so yes, I don't go to every network party or network event, or I'm not always handing out my business card. Sometimes I'll go and I don't even have business cards on me because I want to make sure that the people that want to connect with us are really interested in. So I don't have my cards out like they're like a deck of cards because I want serious inquiries. I want serious people in that are ready to go with their business, because that to me that's important to the model.
So we've kind of been focused more on the in-person networking, but what about the online networking?
Well, the online networking aspect is that I've reached out, people reach out to me. We do the process of them connecting with me through the website or LinkedIn. Actually, LinkedIn is probably one of the best units of connecting that I've met so far, because those connectings that have come through LinkedIn are actual serious inquiries. And I've actually connected with quite a few clients through that process with LinkedIn as my professional profile.
Yeah.
Because they take me serious.
Well, and to me, that's the difference between a Facebook, a Twitter, and Instagram, social media versus, to me, and I know you and I have talked about this before, but being there since the beginning of the dawn of time of LinkedIn.
Listen, I've seen it all from the beginning to now, and in the evolution of websites and programming websites to the model of what social media was, because when it came out, people did not know what it was and how to formulate that into business connections and leads. And people were not sold on social media in the very beginning. Businesses were like, no way, I am not doing social media because I don't understand why we should do business with social media. And now they're like, oh, we got to get on board.
And a blend. And to me, the networking through something like LinkedIn has been very helpful because, one, I've been able to connect with past clients.
Yes.
And that now there's future opportunities that we're reconnecting on. Yeah. So it's kind of keeping that thread always there on the peripheral. But then there's the new ones of people who are like, okay, who's a business coach in Alabama or in Huntsville? And so now my name can pop up in a way that they are actually doing some of that filtering.
Well, now it's that local search inquiry that's happening with Google and things like that. So when we go full circle, which is really what's happening now in the model of businesses, they're starting to recognize that, okay, social media only takes me so far. LinkedIn is that business-to-business connections, and those inquiries are very serious, so please take them serious. That is where I've created a real connection with people that's unique and organic too. Yeah. And so, we all talk about that word of mouth business. LinkedIn is kind of like that word of mouth business. Somebody catches on, they start seeing what you're doing, and then they start going, wow, I need to connect with them, and what can they do for me?
And I know you've done something here in Huntsville that's, to me, is a little bit unique. Not all communities are doing this, but the idea around the LinkedIn Local, I know I got a chance to go to one of the events not that long ago.
I think LinkedIn Local is probably one of the most organic networking meetings because it's there to connect organically together. And it's people that you would not normally meet online, because I think when you meet people online, you're believing that their profile picture is real. And a lot of times that you meet them in person, you're like, well, that's not the same person I see on your profile. Right. By the way, that should not be that way. But a LinkedIn Local is a great way for people to come into the community of Huntsville or even Madison or surrounding areas like Athens, Scottsboro, whatever, and bring their business to connect people. And we're going to be doing another one pretty soon. Okay. And this way is just where for you to go and have a cocktail, listen to some really great music, enjoy people's company without the pressures of that sales pitch part, where you meet people organically and handshake and hello.
The way I would describe it is it's more of just the genuine conversation.
It's very genuine.
Very social, and if you want to talk the business, you can talk the business, or if you want to talk just about...
Or you just want to gab.
Yeah. All of the above.
I like gabbing, but you know what? It's a very natural way of connecting. So I love connections.
Now I'm gonna throw something at you through this second C of connection, and that is relationships. The type of relationships. So I've got this list. It's actually adapted from a book I've read recently called 11. Leonard Sweet is the author, but it's this idea of who are these 11 people, types of relationships that we need to be surrounded with. So I'm gonna give this to you because I know you've not read the book and probably don't know about it, but I'm gonna talk about these relationships more than the book itself. But the very first one they talk about in the book is called an editor. So when you think about relationships out there, who helps to edit you in your business or in your life, or you as a leader? And the editor is one who's not afraid to tell you truth, like the truth bombs, but that it's future oriented. It's not to beat you up. It's not to berate you in any way, but it's to say, hey, Carla, you're screwing up here. Don't you think you ought to? And how about you take a look at this? here's some ideas, here's some suggestions.
Well, I can tell you that when my father was alive, he was my editor,
Okay.
and he had no problem calling me up and
Yep.
telling me and putting me in my place as a business owner, because I was always, now I'm a true, when I have conversation with people, I don't think people understand me. I am business first and personal later. And so that's how I start out my conversation with my father was, how was the business? How's things going? Do I need to come and knock your door down and get you out there? But he was just a very, true, you're hard-headed. You can't, you know what I mean? He was one of those.
All the truth bombs thrown all over.
Oh, yeah. And I was like, sometimes I was like, oh, my gosh, can you just chill out? But no, it was, hey, this business is important. You've got to do this. He was the one that really just pushed me and said, get out there and do this. You have no choice. He made me feel like there was no real choice. He was like, you've got to do this. And I was like, no, there's no other females in the industry right now. And I was
pushed you to an edge.
And he was like, see, I told you you could do it. But, and he really saw the transformation in my success with that. And then when he passed, I had a real struggle, real struggle, not just only missing him because he was my huge inspiration, but I did not have that business sense. I had no.
Your editor was gone.
My editor was missing, and I was trying to figure out a way to figure out how do I replace him emotionally. And one day I was sitting in my office and I'm looking around my office because I was really having a hard day and I was very depressed and I was missing my dad. And and when I talk about him too much, I start crying because I'm missing to this day. And so I'm looking around my office and I see there's a picture of him over here, and then I look behind me. There's a picture behind me.
He's everywhere,
and he was surrounding me. And he was like, I could hear him in my head going, "I'm here all the time. I've not disappeared."
Right.
But he had the really deep radio voice, and so I haven't met anyone like that. Since you have become my business coach, you're my truth bomb, person, and that has been like the transformation for me, is knowing the fact that I have an editor now, and that's been replaced for me. And everybody should have that.
Yeah.
When you're a business owner, people tell you can't do stuff, you're not able to do stuff, don't do this, get a real job. You have no idea how many people have told me in my lifetime, you should go get a real job. Well, this is my job.
Right. I make money at this, right?
I actually pay for the things for my kids, but they would tell me to go get a real job. Yeah. And I'm like, what is it?
Because they're confused. And it's their insecurities that's coming out, and they're trying to lay it on you. Because a lot of times the people who care about us the most sometimes and love us the most feel like they also are trying to be this big security blanket protector. Like, I'm going to save you.
Don't take this risk.
Right.
You shouldn't do this.
Be safe.
Yeah, take the safe road. And I don't take the safe road. I take a lot of chances.
I do too. So editor was the first one. The second one is a true friend. This is a relationship where they're the ones who get you, like, in the most intimate way. Like, that type of relationship where when you, just by a look, like, they can tell, like, you're having a bad day. Like, oh my gosh, the world blew up, and I had a client that just like set the whole world on fire, and they quit on me, like, whatever. That true friend, that relationship is one that we need all of these, all 11 of these relationships, but true friend.
Yeah, for me, I would say my cousin Shira, we're like sisters. Okay. I talk to her every single day.
A lot of times family or spouses or whatever.
Well, I'm going to say my true friend, it's a very hard part. When you're in the business industry, it's really hard. Your circle gets very small. People don't always understand your mental capacity, and they don't understand the ups and downs of your business. And that person, not just a true friend, not just someone that goes and drinks a glass of wine with you. We're talking about those that back you up, understand, relate to the ups and downs.
And hold you a safe space is a big thing for me. Like, yes. My true friend for me
Can
is
I just call you up and say what I need to say? Yeah.
And they're like, okay, is this a listen one or is this one that you need some feedback on? I'm like, this is just a listen one. Blah, 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 blah. Here it is.
Yes, absolutely. So my cousin Shara is that person. She's just definitely that true friend for me. She is one of those that I could call up in a moment's second, just like she can. And we're, I think that fact that when my dad passed away, she replaced that, hey, I need to call and talk to you about something.
For you, she's also a bit of family, so that.
Yeah, I think there's
Another
that. There's
connection.
a good relationship with that too as well.
Yeah, my true friend, actually, I've been friends with her since we were in middle school, 7th grade, from my 7th grade junior high track. I grew up in a little small town, and one of the things we were required was to run around town. That's how small it was. That was our workouts pre-track. Like, get your track outfit on, get your really cool Nike shoes on, and go run. And she and I would be at the back of the group just commiserating on, why are we out for this again? But look at our shoes. They look great.
Yeah.
We actually had matching shoes. Like,
yes,
it was
nice.
like, that's when we knew. We were like, we're going to be friends.
Yeah.
But still to this day, like, I've gone through a divorce. I've gone through family things. She's gone through things. And she also, like, we will talk about, we're not even close to the same industries, but we talk about our work. And I know that she can and I can just unload, and it's authentic, it's real, and we can cry and laugh all in like a matter of minutes.
I think it's so important to be real.
Mm-hmm. And a true friend like that can understand and empathize, and even though she doesn't do what I do,
right.
She can also kind of poke the bear a bit too.
I think that I think social media has replaced some of those friendships over time, where that it's easy to see a photo online and like it and go, oh, she's okay.
That makes us similar others.
Yeah, and everything's good. And then you find out, oh, you're getting divorced, and, you find out there's real trouble going on.
Like what's below the surface. All right. So that was true friend. Third one is butt kicker. Like, who's that person that really will, like, kick your butt? And a butt kicker is different than the editor. An editor is like trying to help you become that better. A butt kicker is like, no, you're not, this is not right. You shouldn't be doing that.
Probably my husband.
Okay, he's the butt kicker.
He's my butt kicker. He puts me in line. We have honest conversations, but he's one who's like, do it. Just do it. He's the one who puts me in line of like, that doesn't make sense. He's just that
and
voice.
Questions too.
Yeah, he has the questions lined up automatically.
But motivation comes through his boot to the butt.
Oh yeah, he's like, he puts me in, and I'm so grateful for it, because he really is. He does believe in my business, and he is definitely behind the scenes. But
he's not going to let you slack.
He does not let me slack at all. Like, he keeps me so accountable, even when I don't want to.
Yeah, and you can think about this too in teams. Like, do we have some of these roles as we go through these? So, when you think about who's a butt kicker, well, a lot of times we as leaders tend to own that role of being the butt kicker to our team, but sometimes it can come through somebody else.
I'm going to say this out loud. I mean, females, we are emotional creatures. And so I'm not saying that men don't put emotion into their business, but we are emotional. We have
more charged that way.
We're charged that way because that's just naturally who we are. So for us, it's like we need that extra butt kicker in the back going, I knew this was not going to work. He already projects what I don't see. Yeah. He sees things that I don't always see sometimes.
And again, because that's the role. Like, and when they own it and they own it well, like you're like, oh crap, I have to answer to him.
I got to go and tell him he's right. And I literally don't like it. Like, he knew it the whole time.
And then there's probably like the "see, I told you so" piece.
Oh no, he's serious. He can, and I wouldn't call him sassy because he's definitely not a sissy, but he is so sassy about it. I knew it. I told you. Right. But I love it. So yes.
All right. So the fourth one is a protege. Like, who's going to be that person, or who can play that role of kind of where you can hand off knowledge or transfer knowledge?
Well, I know my team that I currently have, I absolutely 100%, I can see them visually taking control. Some of the things that I'm seeing them do now is, I can walk in a room with them and they just know what to be doing without me having to hold their hands, and I think that is an incredible thing. I've got a great podcast producer who knows exactly what I'm looking for. I've got a great social media manager. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has this lead about them that I like about, and they're accepting of new information with me. I may be old school, but the knowledge I have is worthy. I hope that they'll take it and still make it their own. And definitely you can see that with them.
Well, and the hope is always that the wisdom that we carry around with us is transferable to somebody. So the idea of a protege is that, like, I'm going to give you everything that I can give you. You can't, we're not yet to the matrix where we just, plug it in the back and I can download. But.
Yeah, and I do think that my team, like, we're just touching the surface. Yeah. But I do know that there's so much more that we'll be capable of doing. There's a lot of things on the horizon. Mm-hmm. We've got some really great ideas. And so they're on board. And I think that knowing the fact that they're excited about it just as much as I am, that potential is just going to continue to grow.
Yeah. An encourager. This is the cheerleader. This is more of the rah-rah than anything else. They don't necessarily kick your butt. They don't necessarily need to have wisdom or knowledge transferred. But who's the cheerleader champion?
Oh, gosh.
The encourager.
The encourager? Because, would it be selfish if I said it was myself? Because
you can be your own. I would hope you have.
I actually talk to myself a lot. Maybe I answer myself. I may be in my own meetings.
You're not going to be alone if you do answer yourself and ask the question.
I do read a lot of self-motivational stuff. I do, and the first thing that I do every day is I try to go get my exercise in. I think mentally it helps me to get my day off right.
And balance probably too.
It does definitely help me with balance. And I try to read something every night before I go to bed. It keeps me motivated. And because on those hard days, I really have to be the biggest cheerleader for myself. Yeah. And I know that sounds selfish, but that's how I have to do things.
Well, I think, so I can relate in many ways. I do actually have an outward encourager, cheerleader champion that I've met in the last couple of years. But I will say, as an entrepreneur, a lot of times we have to be our first encourager. Like, yes. That absolutely has to be a part of who we are to begin with, because there's going to be days that it's a fail point, like throughout the entire day, sometimes for a week. Hopefully it never lasts more than that, but sometimes it does. And you just have to be able to find your ways of getting yourself excited. And to me, that's always going to be the case. And as an organization grows and as a team grows, leaders sometimes have to fall into that role of being that cheerleader, champion, encourager. And really, a leader will fit all of these. But think about the relationship external to us.
Well, I did a podcast just a while, probably a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that this young lady was saying in her podcast, and I thought it was so on point. When you're in business, when you're a business owner, we go to bed unemployed every night. And it's our job to get back up and be employed every day. And so it's our job to reach out to clients. It's our job to nurture that business. And because if we don't, then the domino effect starts happening. Sure. And we're always, being that person. We cannot afford to be lazy. So, yes, do we have bad days? Yes. Do we have days where we get a text message for saying when we wake up? Yes. Do we get a phone call that we don't necessarily want to answer? Absolutely. Yeah. Do we have to put our big person pants on and apologize for something that we've done wrong?
When a mess up an area?
You have to accept that responsibility, and yes, you have to be your own encourager. I feel that the only person that you got to be happy with every day is yourself. And you don't have to like yourself every day, but you got to try the best you can to encourage yourself to be the best.
You don't have to be in love with yourself every day. You do have to like yourself.
Yeah. I'm not saying and the encouraging part is that we have to be the best we can be every day.
Well, and the first voice that we do hear and the last voice that we hear before we go to a subconscious level is our own.
Yeah, and anybody that comes across like negativity to you, the first moment you see them, you're like, okay, you got to put the blockers up and go, I can do this today.
Yeah. All right. So the next relationship person or individual would be a Yoda. You know who Yoda is, right?
Yeah.
Star Wars, like right. Do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah.
Okay. So Yoda is kind of this philosophical relationship person. Like, they're going to dig a little bit deep, but they also are going to challenge your thinking in a very kind of weird, direct way.
Well, I think you do that.
Okay.
There is no doubt. Challenging me is a hard factor. Mm-hmm. I am an A personality. Yeah. I am definitely set in my own ways.
No, really?
Yes, but I also like the fact that there's some things that I don't necessarily not believe in myself, but I also don't see, and that the fact that I'm able to see that clearer now versus a couple years ago, I think that change in I think that evolution of myself has changed too.
Yeah. The Yodas for me, I've got several that have come through my life in my lifetime. Matter of fact, one, I haven't talked to her in 4 years. Today I had a conversation with her first thing this morning. And she and I can just pick up where we left off. She's one that kind of can connect me back philosophically, like how the world is relating to the kind of work that I do, because to me there's something about doing things that are significant, not just to me, not just to my paycheck, not just to the client or customer that I'm working with, but the grander picture, the bigger world. And she can take me back into that and ask me very pointed questions that can draw me in. So I like that role that I have with her. I just hadn't used it in a while, and today it reminded me. So it was good that we were talking about this, because she's definitely one that would ask the question, is it a do or do not? It's not a try. Like, it's not a maybe. It's not like getting pregnant is like you don't just maybe get pregnant. Like, it's a thing that you actually...
There's no maybe.
Or not, yeah. Okay, the seventh one is a back cover or a back cover. Someone who's got your six. Who's got your back.
My very good friend, Barbara. She has been with me, around me, for so many, many years. She's seen my kids grow up. I can call her and talk to her about just about everything. So I know that if I need her, she's there. So for me, that's genuine.
You need a shovel, a sandbag, and a very big truck.
Yes, she would be
She'd
there.
Be there.
Yes. I could call her up and she goes, let me bring the 6-pack. So believe me, and that to me is so special for me.
Yeah. Well, and and it's interesting because some of these, when you think about getting into leadership, and especially at executive level positions, a lot of times, and when I'm working with people, they say they're lonely. But the thing is they don't have enough of these relationships. They don't have enough people that fill these roles. And to me, the person who has your back, the 6, that really would, you give them some cryptic message and they're like, what time and where do I need to show up?
Yeah, I think that sometimes we do feel lonely in this industry that we're in, but we have to be reminded that you're not. Like, you have to go, okay, stop feeling sorry for yourself. It's okay. You can have your boohoo moment for like 2 minutes, if that. And you have to start thinking that you're not alone.
Yeah, I put the egg timer on when I do coaching. Let people whine and do whatever, and then ding. Okay.
Did you put it on for me?
I don't think I've ever done that yet.
Good.
Not yet. It hasn't had to come out yet. There might be.
I don't think I have to do that.
All right, so that's the got your 6 back cover. The 8th one is a reject, like someone who's just kind of helps you to see like the silliness of the world. And
that's my friend Julie. Yeah, she's the one that makes me laugh.
Okay.
Makes me see things differently than anyone else. So I would say that my friend Julie is like that.
I don't know that I've got necessarily a reject right now. Like, I don't have anybody necessarily that fits that role. I may have someone who can dip into that role from time to time, but like, I can't think of anybody. 9, a little one. These are the strong and mighties, like a little David Goliath.
I would say my kids, 100%.
Right?
Yeah, I think that my kids are these little ones that, after all these years of putting time and effort into them, I hope and pray that they see that the hard work that I've put in does take hard work to do. That it's not a given. That and I can see them forecasting their lives in their future. They can hold a job. They work. They pay their bills, and so and know that they can keep up with the necessities of their own lives. Knowing the fact they can do that, I know that they can survive and do well.
Well, to me, little ones are always going to be those that they hit these insurmountables. Like, there's something that could stop them, but they're still going to prevail. And I've come across a lot of them. Right now, I get inspired by like the next generation in my family, the nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
And this always makes me feel old when they're having kids. Kids are having kids. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, I've now officially arrived at that age. But like watching them like find their way through the landmines of the last few years of the world has shifted.
Mud,
and yet they're doing so well. And I'm like, yes. Like,
yeah, I like
I'm
that.
the cheerleader, encourager in the moment where they're the littles.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important thing too, is that we start to look for some of those, whether it's in our team or out there in the environment.
And I can say that I have a mentor, I have a scholar, and I'm a mentor for Amber with the WEDC Foundation. I can say that the time that I first met her to the time that she is today, getting ready to graduate this year, she has found a lot of confidence and sophistication in herself. So I'm hoping that maybe I was some encouragement to that, but you could really see her doing this transition where she's finding herself and knowing the fact that, okay,
it's their own identity.
I'm not the only one that struggled. Right, we've come from the trenches of like the crap that we dealt with when we were younger, and we still made it.
Yeah,
when people doubted us.
Yeah, and the thing is I think what has happened is the world's just sped up in that way. Is that there's just more. So how can we help them become more prepared and stand on the sidelines when they may fall? It's like got to pick you up and help you move along. So it's kind of moving into the encourager for the protege and just overcoming some of those obstacles. All right, 10, rich and poor type of relationships, helping us with the idea around the value of money.
Ooh, money. Well, I mean,
or value in general, not necessarily just money, but value.
I don't know. My husband's pretty good about that. Mm-hmm. He's always forecasting, and we're always thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. I never met anybody like that before, and relationship-wise. Mm-hmm. And so when I met him, he was just strong-minded, forecasting his financial future. He always made me think about that. Yep. I was always living in the moment. He was always living 5 years from now.
So far in the future, you're like, whoa, let's meet halfway, 2.5 years.
Like, why are you going to be so far ahead of me? And so, but he was just that one. And I think that any relationship you're in, I don't care who you are, you have to have someone that's got your financial back. Mm-hmm. Because really, honestly, you got to be able to project that.
Well, and in business and leaders in organizations, I mean, this is such a key role. So whether that's your CFO, overseeing all the finances, or it's just someone that's going to help you to understand, do you want to invest in that? Are you sure you want to buy that much equipment? Can you get by with something? That whole conversation. Sometimes that gets avoided.
Yeah. Well, I can say this. I want to say this. When we were going through COVID and everybody was like going home and working remote, I decided, no, let's open an office. And
do more.
Let's just take the challenge up a notch. And so I was literally just, I'm going to do this because I've been working remote for, 20 years. And I thought, I'm just going to do this thing. And I took a chance and it's working out well.
And here we are.
And so for me, it's like, I knew that I was crazy thinking, why am I opening up an office when everybody else is going back home? And I'm like, I need a space where I've got my team together.
Well, so that talks about the 11th relationship is really with the place. So you just led us right into that conversation, which is sometimes we need to find the most conducive environment for teams to operate, for our business to operate. Some of it's virtual. Some of it does need to be like what you've created as an in-person connection point. And sometimes it just needs to evolve, because sometimes what I've seen in teams or leaders that get stuck in a rut is because they've been in the same place for so long, too long. They've rooted themselves when they should really be transplanting themselves somewhere else.
Well, I think that I've always had to bend my rules, because when I started my business, I was a mother first.
Sure.
And I was trying to develop something with two, twin babies and a little girl at home, and I was like, I have to work around their schedule and I have to work around their lifestyles, because my life was not my life anymore. It was children and my business and my business and my children. And so I learned how to be that flexible person, and I knew when not to be non-productive and when to be productive and focus and things like that. So for me, my business model was always made up that way. So for me to go from wake up every morning and get ready and go to a job from 8 to 5 never was in my picture for the last 21 years. Yeah. And so it would be very difficult for me to go, hey, let me go apply for this job and go work in an industry setting again. I would literally go crazy.
Yeah. You could do it for a very, very short
I would
time.
not even make it to the front door. I did, back in the day, I did get an interview one time to go to government. I think it was a government job. And I walked through the hallways and I went, I can't be here.
It can be
and
and
that was the moment when I knew, like, I'm doing the right thing by being in my own business.
Yeah. I spent 7 years in corporate America, rising fast through ranks. And I loved it for this reason. And I hated it for a lot of reasons. I loved it for this part of corporate America at the time was it operated very entrepreneur-like. So I loved it because we had autonomy, we could make decisions, we could roll around and really go out and make really amazing things happen. So it worked for me for that period of time. But I definitely, towards the end, was like, where's the eject button? Like, I need out, I need out.
I've always been out, but I can tell you that was probably the best decision I ever made. But I did take a lot of chances. And did I pray a lot wishing there was a check in the mailbox? Absolutely.
Sure.
But I made it work. Yeah. And I figured out a way to do it. I figured out to, but not everybody was meant to be, not everybody can work remote.
Sure.
They just don't know how to manage their time.
Yep.
And I know that we're in in this great recession, and everybody's like, changing their jobs and we're job hunting, job from job to job.
The great resignation or whatever
they want to call it. But I do think that, this flexibility that I've had has always been there, but I wanted a place where we could still get together. We can still collaborate.
An anchoring point.
Oh, and I love, the fact that I have a room now where people could come and be creative, and I have a great podcast room and a video room. For me, it's like, this is just the beginning for me.
Mm-hmm. The expansion, the great expansion is coming. As opposed
I would
to
say the great expansion, not the great resignation.
Resignation.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the last two C's, collaboration and competition. So as a leader, what is the best way that you've found to be collaborative?
Using the best softwares. Okay. I mean, systems. I think software systems. To me, communication means what you prefer as a way. The line of communication is: do you like text messaging first? Do you want a phone call first? I like a phone call first. Then texting is following up, and then or an email. So for me, collaboration is those things so that you're communicating that way. But the collaboration is being able to look at a project together and put your spin on it, where everybody understands how it all works together. Yeah. And understanding your clients, understanding the model, what it looks like, so that when you're producing, you're not wasting valuable time, because time is so valuable for every single client. So collaboration, everybody has to get along. Everybody needs to understand that there's money involved. They understand the budget. Because you can max out productivity while without going crazy over the budget.
Sure. Well, and the smaller the organization and what's on the bottom line on the spreadsheets is going to affect how much effort and time you can put into something. So let's come back to this idea of collaboration. So to take your business or a business as a leader to a next level, what are some of the things that you've started to contemplate?
I think that knowing the fact that there's certain parts of this industry that I don't need to be in, and knowing the fact that they don't always work for me now, and knowing the fact that I can refocus my energies where the max effort should be, not only just for the client, but also as us as a business, because the evolution of our business is changing. And so knowing the fact that, hey, these things don't necessarily work for us anymore, and every solution does not exactly speak our language anymore, right. But yet we can do them, because I have touched every part of the industry. Right. I've been a part of it for so long that there's parts that I don't necessarily, I wouldn't call it burnout, but it's not exactly my...
Well, there's no passion around it.
There's actually, that passion is like, why am I doing this now? Okay. Because not everything that we're doing out there for every client should be done.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's a non-desirable. I don't want to do it.
Yes.
Just admit it, it's like, I can outsource that to somebody else.
There's some things that I just don't want to do anymore.
Collaboration, when I look at it as leaders in organizations, whether that's the owner of the company, CEO, or somewhere in between, is one, it's to help support increasing revenue. So some of that collaboration can come from learning something new, learning something different, some upskilling. It can come from kind of through networking, but collaboration can also come in partnerships. It can come in affiliations. It can come in a lot of different ways. And I think the bigger an organization is, sometimes the more they forget that. Having worked in large organizations, sometimes teams to teams forget that they're doing similar activities and they're not even sharing the same knowledge. And that can be a big holdback.
Well, I do think that sometimes when we're setting up affiliations outside of our company, like let's say if there's a part of the department you don't necessarily want full time, but yet you want to use somebody's resources to help identify and develop for a client. I think that's really hard sometimes to create that collaboration with people because they don't have the same identity and values and specs that you follow. So sometimes it's okay to say, no, I'm not going to do that part of the business.
Just opt out.
Yeah, like you don't have to be everything in this in your business.
And we really can't be everything to everybody.
I think there's some people who do.
That believe that? Sure.
I think that they dabble in it, thinking that they're geniuses in it. But I do think that you have to sometimes go, you know what, this is just not part of our company.
And collaboration can also be something that, back to all of those relationships we talked about, maybe we need an editor. Maybe we need someone who's going to go, I don't think that's the best interest for your future. So maybe you should just not go spend a lot of time, money, and effort into going in that pathway.
I think it's so important to know what the job descriptions that the person that came in identifies with understands their job descriptions, because sometimes they like the titles but not necessarily do the work. But I do think that in some ways or another there has to be this more of like, once you develop that job description, those evolve. And so sometimes like somebody comes in, they may come in one direction, but you may find out that they're actually really good in some of the other ones. So you have to revise that job description.
Right.
And then you can re-identify what exactly you're missing. What is that piece of puzzle? Because a title does not define somebody.
Not at all. And to me, in this day and age, titles get slapped on to identities, and what they do doesn't really relate to the actual title. So it's like role and responsibility. And you're what? They don't match up.
So we'll go into the fact that the last four C is competition. So that's an interesting discussion. For me, I think there's plenty of business for everyone, but I do think that people take competition too serious.
Yeah.
Because I feel like even though we are under a certain umbrella or a title of our company,
the industry
is one model, but it is so many pieces. It's so complex.
Yeah, one of the things that I like, that I have adjusted my mindset around with regards to competition, is I'm all about seeking that new and getting inspired. So even if someone does, quote unquote, exactly what I do exactly what you do. Okay, great.
But you do it differently.
But because you are a unique human being, a unique individual, a unique way of showing up in the world, I can't do what you do, and even if we're in the same industry, you can't do what I do because of that uniqueness.
Well, I'm going to say this, that competition, I think that people always go through this cliche that competition is healthy, right? But I do think the competition is not exactly the word we should use. What it is that we try to do with our clients is build a partnership, and we build an understanding that I got this one client over here, but this client doesn't know about this other client, but they are treated special to their needs. And so for me, it's like, if they feel like another person can come in and do a better job than me, and they feel like they have a better relationship, then go right ahead. But the thing is, though, I develop a partnership and a relationship with each of my clients. I call them, I talk to them, we build a business together, and you can see that growth because it's not just a boutique company that I'm working with, but also a company to corporation type style. Sure. And so for me, it's not so much the competition. It's about the people that are behind the scenes taking the information that you train people on, or they're taking stuff off, and going off and doing their own thing with it. That's a problem for me in this industry. Like, it's okay to work with companies, or it's okay to be with other competitors, but make it your own.
Mm-hmm.
Make it yours, not to the point where it's so,
Cookie cutter.
Cookie cutter. I am not
uniform.
Well, I'm not cookie cutter at all. I'm very unique.
So on the last note about this competition is, and the note I wrote down to myself was, where do we focus? Do we focus on the historical evidence of how it's worked or not worked? And that can be, you and I have talked about this work, a fixed mindset, or are you more future oriented and a growth mindset? Yeah.
I'm a growth. I know I'm not don't put me in a box because I'll break out of it. But I am always about growth, and being in that category is so important to me. And I think that's the reason why I've always been in this industry, and I love it, and the reason why I'm passionately still in it. But I do think I fit in the G. I'm a G.
Yay.
Don't put no F on me.
No fix for you.
No fix for me.
Well, so when we think and kind of summarize the journey that we've been on through this podcast, to me is significant leaders really do recognize that there's a certain element of work that they need to do from the inside out. And once that is out there, they can leverage all that from a wisdom standpoint. And, you and I have worked together for a while. I've known you for a while. I do see that idea of you are trying to meet your clients where they're at and help them to get to whatever level it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes it's like fun and all of the in-betweens.
I think it's more like I'm more of a nerd than they are sometimes. And I'm like, I talk nerd language, and they're like, whoa, you need to dumb it down for me a little bit.
Take it down 12 notches, Carla, come on.
And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was over here in my world. And so you have to put it in terms that it's relatable, it's understandable, and it's so that they're willing to grow and they're willing to take things and develop it. And I think it's so important. But I just want to say this is a great podcast to learn more about us as leaders. Mm-hmm. We develop and grow, and hopefully someone that's listening to this podcast can really pull some information from it and use it. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for today's podcast with Lori. It's such a pleasure having you in. This is probably your fourth podcast.
I think it's four.
We're not counting. Let's not count.
We'll not count. I've stopped counting. It's like rings in a tree.
You just come every week and we'll just do a podcast. But anyways, it's a pleasure having you on our podcast.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steph. And this is the Coffee and Hustle podcast. And today this is Lori Fischer with Just Imagine Coaching and Consulting.